Good evening and welcome to the February 5th, 2018 regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to invite Cub Scout Pack 464 to come up here and lead everybody in the pledge. If everyone could please rise. Come on up here, guys. Right in front, right in front.
Face the flag.
Yeah.
Face the flag, guys. Right there.
Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job. Thank you, boys.
Excellent. I give you guys high ratings for that.
Thank you, Scouts.
Next on our agenda is reflection, and I would like to call everyone's attention to two losses to the Gaithersburg family. The first being Matt Kelleher, who started his career as a firefighter, then worked for the Montgomery County, and then ultimately worked for the city of Gaithersburg in our planning and code department as a fire code inspector. He passed away, I believe, last week, right? And John Small, who was a longtime volunteer on our Landlord-Tenant Affairs Committee. And when I say long time, more than a decade he served us. So for them, let's have a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Next, we have the approval of minutes, and tonight we have 3 sets of minutes for the council to consider. Just flip over. The first one is the minutes of the regular session on December 4th, 2017. What is the pleasure of the council?
Move approval of the minutes from December 4th.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 4-0. Next, we have the minutes from the meeting of December 18th, 2017. What is the pleasure of the council?
Move approval. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 4-0. Next, we have the minutes for the joint work session on January 22nd. What's the pleasure of the council?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that also carries 4-0. Next, sorry, my packet is not going to the right spot. Next is so we're gonna do our African American History Month proclamation first. And I'm going to invite Councilmember Sales to join me at the podium, and then we're going to do the recognition for the Quince Orchard varsity football team. So, Lori Ann. Can I invite the Multicultural Affairs Committee, anybody who would like to join us? Bear with me just a sec. Thank you. And we have Dr. Kent Rockford. Please come join us. Oh no, this is you're for NIST. I'm sorry, Ken. I was looking at the wrong. We're gonna get to you in a sec. We have Washington Sangu. Okay. Okay. So African American History Month is celebrated annually in the United States during the month of February. This celebration was started in 1926 by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who wanted to bring national attention to the important contributions of African Americans to the history of the United States. Woodson chose February because it includes the birthdays of Frederick Douglass, Langston Hughes, and Abraham Lincoln. This year, the city's Multicultural Affairs Committee has chosen to celebrate African American history at the Diverse City Showcase, a community event that will highlight the cultural contributions of a variety of ethnic groups, including African Americans. Diverse City Showcase will take place at Lake Forest Mall's Center Court on Saturday, April 14th, from noon to 4:30. The event is free and open to the public, and I highly recommend it. It's an excellent event. Lorianne, would you like to read the proclamation?
Sure would.
Please.
Thank you, Mayor. All right. Proclamation of the Mayor and City Council of Gaithersburg. Whereas the history of African Americans is unique and rich and has helped define what it means to be an African American. And whereas African Americans have come to know the freedoms fought for in establishing the United States, gained through the application of our founding principles of freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to assembly, and due process of law. And whereas African Americans have worked collectively to remove systemic racism and discrimination that pervaded our laws and public consciousness for decades, steadily making progress through the work of Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, Dr. Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall, and others. And whereas African Americans have contributed greatly to the success of our nation in the areas of commerce, business, politics, education, medicine, and the arts. Now, therefore, I, Lorianne Anja Ashman, by the power vested in me as council member of Gaithersburg, do hereby proclaim February 2018 as African American History Month in the city of Gaithersburg, and encourage all government officials, educators, businesses, and residents of the city to honor, recognize, and celebrate the contributions of African Americans to the culture and well-being of our community. Thank you.
Would anyone like to say a few words? It's optional, but you're welcome to.
Well, I plan to introduce Washington.
Please, go ahead.
He probably plans to say a few words.
Good.
Okay. I'm introducing Washington and Sangu, who will receive the proclamation. I guess he's already received the proclamation. Washington came to this area 20 years ago from the Cameroon, settled in Gaithersburg with his wife Susan there, and pretty soon 3 little children. He's been and continues to be completely dedicated to Gaithersburg. He's studying nursing, but his real love is promoting his culture. And in meetings of the Multicultural Affairs Committee, we see that all the time, promoting the culture of his country and of Africa. He's been a member of the Multicultural Affairs Committee since 2011, taking off 6 months to work in the Cameroon, building schools for refugees from the Central African Republic. And then he came back to Gaithersburg and to the committee. He's taught citizenship courses to immigrants. Besides that, he plays basketball, and he works with the nursing staff at Shady Grove Hospital, Washington.
Thank you very much. Mayor,
Why don't you just pull that mic. Yeah, point that. Yeah, there you go.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor and City Council and residents of this great city of Gaithersburg. It is with honor and respect this year's proclamation, and I remind us, all of our diverse city and nation, a famous proverb from the Bamoun community of Cameroon say, the God grace where it is tight, meaning setting root in a community. Once again, thank you very much.
I won't forget that. Okay, I'd like to invite everybody who's affiliated with the Quince Orchard football team to come on up. You got a strategy for that?
No, I don't. I'm gonna give you one to read.
Okay, cool. Come on over here. Mhm. See you. See you. Thanks for coming. Congratulations. All right. So this is one, I know to my colleagues on the council and to staff, this is going to seem like this is entirely a matter of personal privilege because I love the Quince Orchard football team and go to the game, and so does our city attorney who's behind you. Lynn and I go to virtually all of the QO games, but it really goes beyond that. Every Friday night during late summer and fall, a large section of our community gets together to share something that's really special, and that's Quince Orchard High School football. To people who have not experienced the atmosphere at the Cougar Dome, you can try to describe it, but it's honestly hard to do it justice. The roar of the Red Army and the sea of red hoodies in the stands, the heart-thumping sound of the team taking the field to Metallica, the mouth-watering aroma coming off the Booster Club grill, the marching band blaring out the fight song, the cheerleaders, the palms, and at the root of it all, it's the football. Outstanding football. Last night's Super Bowl was, it was a terrific game. It was, of course. But Super Bowls and pro football in general are so overrun by corporate interests and various agendas that the game itself can sometimes be lost in the shuffle. Well, at the high school level, the game is real, it's pure, and it's never lost in the shuffle. And we are so lucky to have such a strong, wonderful tradition here in Gaithersburg. I've been going to games myself for the last 14 years, starting from when my son was on the team. And every one of those years saw Quince Orchard make the playoffs. I believe we have 5, correct me if I'm wrong, 5 regional titles during that stretch, and we've made it to 5 state finals in the last 11 years. If you think about that, there's a lot of high schools in the state of Maryland. I think there's like 25 in Montgomery County alone. So that's a remarkable run. This year the Cougars went 12-2. If there was instant replay in high school, I'm pretty sure they would have been 13-1. They would have beaten Bolus. That's right, guys. They know this is true. And in the state final, they went toe-to-toe and took a lead into the fourth quarter against Wise, which is a team that literally has not lost a game since about midway through the Obama administration. It was an outstanding year. So I want to say congratulations to, on behalf of the city, to the athletic director, Jeff Raverman, and congratulate Coach John Kelly, who is here, and all of his staff. Everything about this team is a reflection of their leadership and inspiration. There's a lot of kids on the team, so I don't have time to get as individual as I'd like to get, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about what a pleasure it's been for the last 3 years to watch quarterback Doc Bonner, who is here, basically light it up and rewrite all of the records in the high school. He's been an amazing high school player, first team All-Met Washington Post, and after graduation he'll be heading off to play football and serve our country at the Air Force Academy. So give him a round of applause for that. And I can talk about others like Hodges and McGonigal and Terry and Payne and Firestein and Cooper and about 40 other guys who are absolutely worthy of our recognition as well. But I'll just say, gentlemen, that we've invited you to say thank you for the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into your team and recognize your success. We thank you for the proud way that you represent your school and our community. And I hope to our students here, don't forget, wherever you go from here in your life, you still represent Quince Orchard and you still represent the city of Gaithersburg. And I want to thank everybody involved with the QO football program for giving our community a great reason to come together and share a unique, wonderful Gaithersburg experience under those Friday night lights. So congratulations to all of you. And everybody's receiving a certificate of recognition that says congratulations on demonstrating exceptional athletic ability during a 12-2 season and on the outstanding team spirit displayed in the 2017 Maryland Class 4A State Football Championship. Best wishes for continued success in the future. Presented this 5th day of February 2018 and signed by me. Let's give them all a great round of applause. Let's do a picture. Stand up, guys. Let's let you guys be seen. With this group, you got to stand up.
You got the Eagles jersey.
Yeah.
Darn right.
Good still? Okay. I want to open it up. You're welcome to say a couple words if you like.
Yeah.
Please, go right ahead.
Yeah, just real quick on behalf of myself, our coaching staff, our players, Quince Orchard administration, and community. I just want to thank the mayor for having us here today, and city council being for having us here today, and present this honor to our kids. Means a lot. One thing you kind of hit on a couple of key points that I'll hit on. Again on Friday nights, the football atmosphere it's kind of more than football. I think the big thing at Quince Orchard is a community, because you got everybody's there watching, everybody, and that's what I think makes it so special. All the kids we have on our team, come together for one common goal. We started already. We start in January every single year. They work very hard. It's very important to them, on and off the field stuff, and they do a great job. And they do a great job coming together. And again, the support that we get, from the community itself here, in Gaithersburg, as well as the administration staff. It's very important to make things all work. So again, just want to thank the mayor and the city council for having us here tonight. Appreciate all your support and look forward to receiving more. Thank you.
Excellent.
Hello, I'm Doc Bonner. Coach Kelly, the mayor said it. You can have a good football team, but the thing about a good football team is a great community. And this community, the Gaithersburg community, has done nothing but great things for us by coming out every game. We work hard throughout the summer, throughout the off season, to give everyone in the community a show, to let everyone know that we're not only playing for ourselves, but we're also playing for the community as well. And right now, one of our brothers is down. He's fighting right now, but so right now our focus is on praying for him, keeping him in my prayers, and we hope the same the community does that as well. And we're honored. All my teammates are here. Well, not all of them, but most of them. We're all honored to be here right now and accepting these certificates. Thank you again.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to move on to our NIST presentation. Go right again.
Okay,
and
thank
welcome.
you. Well, thank you, Mayor Ashman and members of the council. I'm pleased to be here to talk about our 20-year master plan for NIST's Gaithersburg campus. I hope you're familiar with NIST. We're a federal laboratory that's part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and we perform measurement science for the nation. We've been at the forefront of R&D for 117 years, and we've been your neighbor in Gaithersburg for over 50 years. Gaithersburg residents may know us best as one of the largest green spaces within the city limits, or for our often visible herd of deer on campus. What you may not realize is how NIST's work helps make possible many of the technologies you use every day, from wireless communications to biopharmaceuticals to cybersecurity. NIST measurement research and standards help industry innovate and compete and help communities flourish. We have about 2,800 federal employees on our campus and another 2,800 guest researchers who help with our mission. Many of our staff scientists and engineers are the world's expert in their fields. Our researchers have earned 5 Nobel Prizes so far, and we hope to get more in the future. But to ensure that future, we must give our researchers the right tools to do their jobs, and that includes world-class facilities. Our campus here in Gaithersburg includes 579 acres and about 60 buildings. We have few newer buildings that are state-of-the-art or even beyond state-of-the-art, but the vast majority of the campus was constructed in the mid-1960s. And in the last 50 years, the building environment required for research has changed dramatically. We have atomic level microscopes and instruments that are so sensitive that our scientists in our older buildings can literally see the images jostled when trains travel through Gaithersburg. We can analyze chemicals at the picogram level. That's 1 trillion times smaller than a grain of salt. And we can manipulate quantum states so that we can lead the next revolution in computing. But for these high-tech demands, many of our buildings are just woefully inadequate. Now, of course, we do required maintenance every year, but that doesn't achieve the fundamental changes in building performance that we need. So the 20-year master plan that we'll be discussing today, it envisions, creates a vision of the future for the NIST campus. It answers the question, what buildings and infrastructure do we require to meet our mission over the next 2 decades? For example, our measurements are going to require better control of temperature, humidity, of vibration, and this may require new construction or it may require gutting buildings and starting over. In the 1960s, energy efficiency was not a thing. Many of our original buildings are very inefficient and need renovations to improve energy use. And our campus entrances were designed in a simpler time with fewer security needs. So our master plan also anticipates improvements to traffic flow and the visitor check-in process. We've worked very hard on this plan, and we're grateful for many people who have helped us, including the City of Gaithersburg planning staff, the National Capital Planning Commission, and the Maryland Historic Trust, since our campus was recently designated as a historic district. So to recap, you're going to hear about a master plan that addresses 3 broad categories: better buildings and physical support for advanced research, improvements to campus access and traffic flow, and to support security improvements, and enhanced energy efficiency and sustainability. Now, we've established a website that you'll learn more about, where the public and city staff can view and download the current draft master plan document, as well as the companion draft environmental assessment. And it's important to note that this plan is aspirational. It represents our hopes and dreams, but it's not a funded plan. But it is a carefully considered view of the future, one that will help NIST thrive to meet our critical mission supporting U.S. industry. Now, perhaps the most important thing in the city of Gaithersburg, it is a plan that will maintain green space, support energy conservation and sustainable operations, improve traffic flow, and will ensure that NIST continues to be a good neighbor to the community. So at this point, I'd like to pass things over to Susan Cantilli. Susan's an architect and a facilities planning team lead for NIST, and she'll provide more details. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. Before I start, I just want to introduce a few others from NIST that are in attendance here tonight. Skip Vaughn is here. He's the Chief Facilities Management Officer and Director of our Office of Facilities and Property Management. Also from that same office is Philip Newberg. He's our Federal Preservation Officer and co-manager with me of this master plan. We have Mike Blackman, who is our Environmental Compliance Officer in the Office of Safety, Health, and Environment, and Gail Porter, who's the Chief of the NIST Public Affairs Office. In addition, Debarga Sengupta is here. He is with Metropolitan Architects and Planners. They are our master planning consultant and oversee a large group of sub-consultant firms. And Debarga is an urban planner, and he is the project manager for the firm. Also, I would really like to thank Trudy Schwartz, Laura Howell, Rob Robinson, and John Schlichting for meeting with us several times over the last few years, providing information and giving us very good advice, and for assisting us with tonight's presentation. So, this is just a short list of highlights, some of which Kent has already mentioned of the master plan, and I will touch further upon these in the presentation. Just a few little bit of background about NIST. So it began as the National Bureau of Standards at the beginning of the 20th century, and it was located in Washington, D.C., where the University of District of Columbia is now located. As the middle of the 20th century rolled around, the Bureau of Science of Standards was outgrowing that D.C. location, and so the headquarters moved up here to Gaithersburg. The Gaithersburg location was really ideal for NIST in that it satisfied several requirements. The large area allowed future expansion, as well as the green buffer around the research buildings. There was not a lot of development at the time, so it allowed for reduced environmental interference with the research, and it was accessible to the staff.
So it wasn't for the deer?
No, it definitely was not for the deer.
Just checking.
So I did want to point out that from that original construction period in the 60s, we still have 73% of our space that we use dates from that period. As far as personnel, we have about 4,000 people that are actually stationed and assigned office space at the campus, and we've determined that about 20% of the federal staff live within Gaithersburg itself. As Kent mentioned, in 2016, the entire 579-acre campus was determined to be eligible as a historic district, and it was noted for its contributions in science and technology, as well as a significant example of mid-century research campus design. Additionally, we have some stats here regarding the number of visitors we have, quite a few conferences. We host conferences in most days of the year, many of which are several hundred people. And obviously, a campus of this size, we do have quite a few commercial vehicles coming in. Although I want to point out that this number includes service vans and small delivery vans, construction vehicles, and parcel delivery vehicles, as well as larger semi-trucks. So this is the existing campus as it is today. Just wanted to point out a few things. Okay, good. See the arrow. This area in the center we consider the center core. And as you can see, there are several buildings that are lined up long and narrow in a very orthogonal relationship. Those are the original general purpose laboratories. In the center is the main administration building. The tall tower that you can see from 270 is actually this slender wedge right here. And this building also serves as the campus center in terms of housing many of our public amenities. It's got the conference center, a large cafeteria, a beautiful library, and draws many of the staff members to it every day. The buildings on either end of this campus of the center core are actually newer research buildings, so this one and this one. And this area is really the service zone where we have our central utility plant. We have offices and shops in this building and other related service buildings. And in the whole southern portion is what we call our special purpose laboratories. You can see they stand alone. They have various different shapes, and they were really designed for the research going on within them. Just a minute about the gates. Of course, our main entrance is off of West Diamond. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. It's used for staff and visitors. It's the primary visitor entrance. Gate B is exit only. Gate C along Quince Orchard Road is where primarily our commercial vehicles enter now. There's very little queuing space within the campus or on Quince Orchard, so we have recognized that that is an issue that needs to be solved. Gates D and E are both closed for safety and security reasons and are anticipated to remain that way. And the other main gate is F here along Muddy Branch Road, and it's primarily for visitors, but we also bring in conference goers for the larger conferences that have been pre-vetted. This is just an aerial of the campus with West Diamond down at the bottom, and as well as 270. So much of the master plan is actually driven by our current needs. As Kent mentioned, many aging buildings, they have obsolete systems. They really can't support the research today. Additionally, all the site infrastructure, the utilities were constructed in the 60s also. They also are in dire need of replacement or repair. Security and circulation issues at the gates. We lack the facilities, literally, to screen visitors and vehicles that current regulations now call for. And finally, pedestrian connections, we really would like to improve those and encourage people to walk the campus and not jump in their car when they need to go to another building. Future requirements also factor in highly to the master plan. We have a need for additional research buildings as well as office space to house anticipated staff growth. So as part of the master plan, we did do put together a program which essentially allows us to determine how much space we think we might need, as well as the types of facilities needed and how many people should we be planning for. So as we said, this is over 20 years. So currently we have about 4,000 people and approximately 3.6 million gross square feet on the campus. Over the 20 years, we're projecting about 1,100 additional people, And for just the growth factor, we are anticipating a little over 500, which we call net or assignable square feet. There's an additional need for over 90,000 square feet for existing needs of new space. So we estimate that correlates to approximately 1.4 million gross square feet in new construction needed. On top of that, we're looking at more than 2 million gross square feet of facilities that need to be renovated. So these are our aspirational goals for the master plan that really evolved through our master planning process. Just to highlight a few, maintaining the attractive campus environment is important to us as well as everybody at NIST. We're very proud of our historic district designation, and so we're pretty pleased to show you how we've managed to anticipate the growth within the historic district. And advancing sustainable and environmental goals is very important. This is another aerial view of the campus. This one is from the southeast. And if you'll watch, this is the full build-out for the 20-year campus master plan. It's focused in the center of the campus. New construction is focused in the center of the campus. But as you can see, it really blends with the fabric of the campus. Looking at the master plan in plan form, the new construction is depicted by the dark orange color. The lighter buff color depicts all the buildings that require renovation. And going around the campus As you may be aware, we have a large forested area in this section of the campus. There's another smaller one here. They both date from when the campus was constructed. And we've been gradually adding trees along the 270 corridor or the border. And our master plan calls for a more aggressive reforestation of the campus all along that southeast border as well as the southwest border. This is part of our stormwater management strategy that we're hoping to improve our stormwater management response. So in addition to the reforestation, various areas such as this area and this area, we're proposing to let it go to more of a natural meadow-like state. And you can't see it on the on this master plan because of the scale, but we're also calling for vegetated swales to be constructed along many of the roads, rain gardens within some of the parking lots and other targeted locations. This solar field is approximately 15 acres, and we anticipate it actually being constructed in the next year.
Wow.
It will take care of approximately 5% of NIST electrical requirements. And incidentally, we are just completing the construction of a combined heat and power facility on our central utility plant, which will provide about 15 to 20% of our electricity needs. So in the southern portion of the campus, we have various special research labs that have been projected to be required sometime over the next 20 years. The vast majority of the construction is focused in the center of the campus, and as Kent mentioned, most of our new construction is for research facilities. We do have modifications going on at gates A and F, which I will talk about in just a second. And finally, I wanted to point out that, as you probably know, the Corridor Cities Transitway is planned to go along the NIST side of Quince Orchard Road, and you can barely make out that path. They are proposing to build a new station along the NIST property. It would actually take the place of the existing Gate C, which is located here, and it would be aligned with Quince Orchard Boulevard, where there's a light, and it would give a little more queuing space into the campus. So our immediate priorities, this is kind of a long list, and it just depicts the fact that we have an extensive list of needs. Already underway is this building, which is called 245. It's an expansion and a modernization of the building. Also, the site infrastructure renewal that I had mentioned, Gate A and F modifications, and a new research building which extends this main campus core and ties into the campus circulation system, which will then in turn allow a phased modernization of all of these research buildings. Gates A and F, the improvements that we anticipate here, this is Gate A, this is West Diamond Road here. We don't propose any changes right at West Diamond, but further up, we're expanding the existing facility to allow screening for visitors, their vehicles, as well as the people. They will go into the visitor center and be screened and get their credential for the day. You know, most significantly, we're adding queuing space for visitors, and we hope that this will help alleviate some of the congestion that sometimes happens down at the intersection with West Diamond Road. We're also proposing a roundabout to help manage that intersection. And this is a sketch of what that could look like. Along Muddy Branch, we would like to create a new commercial vehicle inspection facility, a new commercial vehicle entrance. So it's a a little bit further along the road from the existing Gate F. It provides extensive queuing space for trucks, and once they pass inspection, they will go to a new shipping and receiving building, and they will offload their goods and then leave the campus. This also provides for a future visitor center at such time that NIST might need it. And one of the advantages of this gets all of the commercial vehicle traffic that we currently contribute to Quince Orchard Boulevard over to Muddy Branch, which is currently a less traveled road. And this is a aerial depiction of what that might look like. Another enlarged plan is the center core. And again, this shows the new research building to the farthest north. We have 3 new research buildings in the center, which were placed there purposefully to allow increased collaboration and flexibility for the research. There's a new parking garage, which will help to take up the parking that will be dislocated from this center location. And we wanted to show that we're creating a new covered pedestrian walkway to the front gate. We're creating additional strong pedestrian connections from the gate this way, and in this area we have what we call pedestrian way or mall, where we're limiting vehicular traffic and allowing a pedestrian collection point, which then creates a stronger connection over to the future CCT station. The new research buildings also connect into what we have a interior pedestrian concourse that connects all of the buildings in the center core. So they will also have an overhead connection to these buildings. So as Kent mentioned, we also have a companion environmental assessment, which is out in a draft format also. I'm certainly not going to read this entire slide. I just wanted to mention that the analysis that was done in that looked at both our master plan as well as a no action alternative. And the overall conclusion is that most of the impacts are positive. There are some temporary adverse impacts from the construction. I wanted to highlight the fact that we're proposing that our modernization and new facilities are either hope to be LEED Gold or net zero. And I should have, I did mention the solar array that we're putting in. So we're putting in extensive renewable energy as we go along. As far as providing comments to our master plan, the website is shown at the bottom here. We also have flyers in the rack outside the door here. And I believe it will also be posted on the City of Gaithersburg website. We certainly invite all public to take a look at our plan and our environmental assessment and send us comments by the end of March. And this is the email that comments can be sent to. So in closing, we have a simulated flyover, which is a video of the full master plan build out over the 20 years. as you can see, most of the new construction is concentrated in the center of the campus.
Very cool. We don't see a lot of simulated flyovers, so appreciate you guys doing that. I also like the fact that you rendered the Quarter Cities Transitway line as part of your flyover. We're hoping that happens, and so I find your flyover simulation to be optimistic, and we like that. We like that optimism.
Right, we do too. As Kent had said, it's an aspirational goal for this plan.
Yeah. So just first off, Kent and Susan, we thank you guys and your team for coming here to make this presentation. For those of you in the audience or watching at home, generally the plans that come before the mayor and council here, we have jurisdiction over in planning and zoning authority, and so you would send comments to us. In this case, it is federal land, and so that is why our partners at NIST have come here very nicely to show this to the public and invite your comments. Our partnership with NIST is very important to the city. We're certainly glad that you're there and appreciate the relationship that we've had over the years. And you correctly identify we do have some queuing issues. I see it often on Quince Orchard Road coming into one of those. I forget what letter entrance it is, but we all see it and appreciate you giving thought to that. And of course, stormwater management is a big issue for the city, and in terms of the goals that we're going to have to meet in order to meet the requirements of our permit, stormwater, whether it's originating from your property or from within the actual corporate city boundaries, you have your goals and targets that you have to meet, and we have ours, and we're sort of in this together. So we appreciate the thought you guys are giving to that. And also I can't help but be struck as I look at this is, you say you bring up when NIST moved to Gaithersburg and how it was this big, wide, spread out piece of property and sort of developed like a suburb, and now you guys are more urbanizing just like we are. It's sort of a microcosm of the city. Anyway, I wanted to open it up to council members if you guys wanted to comment or question.
Well, I'll start off. I'll echo the mayor's comments about appreciating the longstanding spirit of cooperation between NIST and the city, and we certainly value NIST's presence incredibly highly as a great asset for our region and for our city. And I think evidence of that spirit of cooperation is reflected in the esteemed delegation of many, many folks on the NIST team who came tonight, and we appreciate you being here. I did have a couple of questions, one of which struck me a little bit during the flyover simulation. Could you talk a little bit about the expectations for the height of the buildings and the campus generally from now compared to what this aspirational vision would bring? I think there was mention early in the presentation about that one taller, skinny building that can be seen from the perimeter. What do we imagine the height, the sort of skyline, if you will, of the full build-out to be in this plan?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, and I really should have mentioned that. The new buildings that we are proposing are very much in line with the existing massing of the existing buildings. So the tall tower that you see will remain the only tall tower on the campus. The rest will be approximately 3 stories like our existing research facilities.
Great. And then the only other question I had was, there's been a lot of conversation over the years about the potential surplusing of the Nike site, and I didn't see that kind of on the plan. I don't know if that's sort of considered separate from the formal NIST campus, but I was wondering if you all, if that's how you treat it in terms of developing your master plan.
So you're right, it was not part of the master plan. I'm sure, as you know, we've had a lot of back and forth with the city on that property. Right now, we do have a research program using it. We anticipate it phasing out over the next few years, and we are at this point planning to begin the excess property multi-step process
Yes.
starting about 2020.
Wonderful. Okay. Those are the only questions I have.
Great.
Thank you.
Who's next? Mike?
Sure, you know, as a scientist myself, I'm pretty excited to have NIST in Gaithersburg and to reflect on the needs and desires to improve the facilities. I certainly remember as a microscopist, both light and EM, the impact of people walking down the hallway. So things kind of so I appreciate the need to do this, and certainly, you know, I think it's the historic designation of the campus is a cool thing as well. I think people either don't appreciate or perhaps don't remember 60s campus architecture, but you know, I saw it at UCSD, where I was an undergraduate. I saw it at UC Riverside, where I was a graduate student, UCLA, various places. So it's, you know, the architecture is reminiscent of many things, but I think the most important thing is the impact this has on the community. I have many neighbors who are either current or retired members of staff members of NIST, and a number of new neighbors who are relatively new to the area and employed at NIST as well. So I think it's had a major contribution to everything that we do in the city, whether it's the support for schools and education in STEM fields, and contributing to other aspects of the community. So, but I think the important thing that we can see and take from this is the efforts at environmentalism and sustainability that's going on in campus now. I think there's some models there that we can certainly learn from, but I think you certainly, given the footprint, I think the whole plan to become more sustainable and environmentally conscious has an impact, a positive impact on the community, and I think we can certainly learn from all of that. So I'm you know, since I work at the NIH campus, I've seen a lot of construction over the last 20 years for much needed research buildings and renovations. So for the most part, that's happened kind of unobtrusively, and all of a sudden, you know, a new building's populated or another one is depopulated and then repopulated after renovation. So I anticipate this is going to happen the same way, and I think this is a good thing for all of us, and a good thing for the region. Certainly what happens at NIST is going to have an impact on the other technology fields and companies in the area as well. So that's all good for Gaithersburg. So thank you for presenting this plan. I do want to, as Judd said, seeing the root of the CCT on this master plan is a nice thing. So we're hoping that can actually be an activated element. So.
Thank you.
Gloria?
Well, I'd like to piggyback on your emphasis on the CCT. I know with 1,100 employees coming on the horizon, it's going to be important to have the necessary infrastructure. So I'm glad that there's attention to pedestrian safety, and you're focusing on green infrastructure. And I know someone from NIST came to the Economic Development Committee meeting, and so we talked about how there's visiting scientists who come and they use the amenities in the city. So, you know, having these opportunities to learn about what you're doing and how you're expanding the campus and how the city can support those efforts and welcome residents who are here temporarily or long-term. Please continue providing us with feedback on how we can better accommodate your guests and make them feel at home when they're in Gaithersburg. So thank you.
Thank you.
Neil?
Yeah, I'll just make a couple of brief comments. You know, it's great having you here, obviously. I have a number of friends and neighbors who are employees there, and it's always interesting finding out what they're working on and the new breakthroughs that are on the horizon. You know, if there's any, I know that the folks who are represented here are all about construction and building the new campus, but if there's any way we can partner with you on spin-out companies and things like that, I know there's been some movement in that direction at the organization, but I'm sure our economic development team would be happy to continue those conversations and see what we can do to work together to build our local economy. I also want to say I really appreciate, and I'm sure our residents really appreciate the green space on the campus. Even though we can't get over the fence to actually be in it, it's nice driving by and seeing it, and seeing the deer along Quince Orchard Road, seeing the groundhogs sticking their heads out of the ground. My wife is from London, and I don't know if it's because they don't have them in England or she's a city girl or something, but we drove by one day and I said, look at all the groundhogs, and she's like, the groundhogs are real? She honestly thought it was a mythical creature from the movie, but anyway, it's really great to drive by that campus and have the green space, but also know there's so much cutting edge activity going on there. So, but thank you for the presentation. It's great to see what's going on.
Well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.
You bet. So thank you, and have a good night. And hopefully we'll be in touch and you'll hear from members of the public. Next on our agenda is from the public comments. This is the time when the mayor and council like to hear from anybody who'd like to speak on any topic that's not a public hearing topic, and we have no public hearing, so basically anything you'd like to talk about. We ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. When your time is down to 30 seconds, the timer will beep and turn yellow. When it's up, it'll beep and turn red. We ask that you state your name and address or neighborhood for the record. Who would like to be our first speaker? Barbara, come on up.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Barbara Sears. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Linos and Blocker. And with me is John Lestuca, and he is of the Rock Creek Group, who is the owner of the 700 Quince Orchard Firstfield Road property. Contains about 13 acres. And first, I'm sorry, I apologize for not getting the letter in before your record closed. For some reason, the client wasn't aware of the change, and as soon as they became aware of it, we got the letter in. So there is that timing of a couple weeks there that we missed the hearing record closure. But I hope you'll consider it. It is has to do with item 11A, which is the affordable housing amendment. And this particular development was approved for sketch plan about, it was July of 2016. And it has the office building, which has been vacant, contains about 340,000 square feet. So it's a large vacant office building. We had the complexities of trying to position that to either re-tenant it or do something with it that would make it a productive improvement, as well as the back pieces, which were anticipated to be townhouses. So there's been a lot of activity with reference to the office, and I think that's all been positive. We're not in a position tonight to give you details about it, but I hope that we are very soon, and I hope that you will consider it a positive development. So we have our fingers crossed on that. But in the meantime, for the last 18 months, they've really been working on the townhouse development, which would contain about 153 townhouses, and or 158. I'm going to get this wrong. It's a little bit lower than that. Okay, 140. So those would have the requisite amount of MPDUs and workforce housing, 7.5%, 7.5%. And so there's no question about agreeing with the program, agreeing to have the MPDUs, but they have planned to have the MPDUs at 16 foot as 10 MPDUs and the workforce at 18 foot. And then the market is proposed in the most current plan, which was just submitted in for review of staff, and they are currently reviewing it. So this particular amendment would change add two provisions which cause problems. One is the idea that these affordable units must be proportionate in size, and that apparently goes to the width of the MPDU, as it was explained to the clients. And also, it does not allow side-by-side.
Barbara,
Yeah, so we asked that they be grandfathered and allow the properties that have an approved sketch plan that were approved with townhouses to be able to proceed without those two sections applying. And I
Okay.
think Lynn has some thoughts on it, so we wanted to bring that to your attention and hope that you will consider it when you adopt the final legislation.
Thank you for
Yep.
for that.
Okay, thank you.
You want anything more? Okay. First off, do we have anybody else who'd like to speak in public comments? Okay, not seeing anybody. Lynn, do you have some thoughts on that, as Barbara alluded to, that you'd like to share?
I mean, certainly the record is closed in this case.
Yes.
So, you know, technically you cannot consider the letter that was submitted.
Right.
This is a legislative matter, so with regard to the ordinance that is before you, I know we talked about this before, you could not adopt something that's more expansive than what's been advertised, but you could do something that's less expansive. Staff did meet and discuss this issue, and you know, if you are inclined to make amendments, you know, we do have some proposals when we get to that item that we can discuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all very much. We will move on to from the mayor and council, and we're going to start with council member Sales.
Thank you, Mayor. So it's been a while since we've had our comments from the council. We missed our last meeting due to a cancellation to Annapolis. Let's see. So we opened up a new business, Herbology, just opened up on 355. You can learn more about that on their website. I also attended the Economic Development Breakfast. We had a speaker who talked about the retail market analysis, especially related to the Kentlands and how they're trying to revitalize the retail market in that community. So it was a really good talk and well attended by both the Economic Development Committee and the Old Town Advisory Board Committee as well, the subcommittee. And almost all of the council members were there. I also went to the Women's Legislative Briefing. I moderated a panel, the Ready to Run panel, talking to young women and encouraging them to run for office and learn about the challenges of running for office. The Maryland 355 Bus Rapid Transit held one of 3 open houses at Gaithersburg High School. I think they may still have some coming up, but you can learn more about that on the website. They had really good interactive displays at the high school, and it was very well attended. We were also visited by the Latvian media, who came to talk about diversity in the city of Gaithersburg and interviewed me and some of my colleagues and the mayor. I also joined the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Chesapeake Bay Policy Committee. It's a work group that's tracking and reviewing legislation that's being proposed in the General Assembly. This legislation could impact water resources, stormwater management, wastewater, drinking water, and infrastructure. And we will be making any determinations for any actions between the meetings. So those are held weekly. I just wanted to thank the Department of Public Works for pre-treating the streets ahead of the ice storm this weekend. I was able to make it to church on Sunday, so thank you for that. I'm sure others had a better time navigating the streets as well due to your preparation, so thank you. And upcoming this week, I hope everyone can attend. We're having Coffee with a Cop this coming Thursday, so please join officers from the 6th District of the Montgomery County Police Department and the city's police department on Thursday morning from 9 to 10:30 at the Target in Rio. And you can probably find more information on our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorianne. Neil.
All right, I'm going to start with a formal announcement. A closed meeting was held at City Hall by the Mayor and City Council on Monday, January 22nd, 2018 at approximately 9:35 p.m. pursuant to a motion adopted unanimously. The meeting was proposed to be closed pursuant to the general provisions article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, sections 3-305B3, to consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose and matters directly related thereto, and to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice. The topic discussed was a potential school site. Present at the meeting were Mayor Ashman, council members Harris, Sales, Sesma, Spiegel, and Wu. City staff present were City Manager Tomasello, City Attorney Board, Deputy City Manager Enslinger, Assistant City Attorney Johnson, Planning and Code Administration Director Schlichting, Parks, Recreation, and Culture Director Potter, Planning Division Chief Schwartz, and Board of Education members James Song and Peter Gehling. Both left at 10:15 p.m. Upon conclusion of the discussion, the closed meeting was adjourned at approximately 10:20 p.m. So I also participated in the discussion with our friends from Latvia, and I know several of us will be on Latvian TV. Hopefully we'll be able to find that on YouTube and understand that we're dubbing our voices into Latvian. So that should be entertaining, I'm sure. Also, for those of you who might have heard, there was a football game last night.
There it is.
We knew this was coming.
And having grown up in the city of Philadelphia from 1960 to the mid-'80s, I have Eagles green in my blood, and it was a glorious time to actually see the Eagles finally win the Super Bowl. The last championship the Eagles won was in 1960 before there was a Super Bowl, so it was a wonderful for all of us Eagles fans and for many people who are just not really fond of the New England Patriots. So anyway, I'll probably be wearing this shirt for the rest of the year, so don't be surprised. Had the honor of doing the ribbon cutting for another new business in town, the Warhammer game store. Somehow that became mine to do. Maybe being the only one at the dais who has actually played Warhammer in the past. It's a...
That would be why.
Yes, thanks for the comment, Ryan. Warhammer is a game played with little miniature figures. There are several different variations of it, and they sell the miniatures and teach you how to paint them and play the game in the shop. They have a big lineup of people waiting to come in. Looks like it'll be a fun addition to the neighborhood. It's right next door to the Starbucks in Kentlands if you feel like checking it out. We had a discussion at the Transportation Committee meeting about the U-turn traffic problem on Route 28, and received a letter from the Maryland Department of Transportation proposing to put a no U-turn sign on 28 in order to try to alleviate that problem. There are further discussions going on between the city's engineering department and the school and the state highway and many of the parents, because it solves one small piece of the problem, but I think there's a lot of other issues with that school at drop-off time in the morning that need to be addressed. I'd like to point out, if anyone's interested in some visuals on what's going on in the Kentland Shopping Center, the Kimco side, the MoCo Show has a number of visuals on their website. If you go to mocoshow.com and click on neighborhoods and then click on City of Gaithersburg, and you scroll down a couple of screenfuls, you can see visuals of what the new movie theater will be like in the Paseo, and lots of good stuff that I hadn't really seen before. Also on that site, you can see that somehow the Eagles are coming up again. There are 3 Montgomery County residents who are members of the Super Bowl champion Eagles football team. Ronald Darby, Matt Collins, and on the practice squad, Billy Brown. So congratulations to all of them. And without Montgomery County, I don't think we'd be champions today. So great. And finally, I also wanted to point out that the stock market didn't have as good a day as Eagles fans did today. And there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that might have been a little prescient last week in terms of talking about the fact that with the current government budget, where taxes have gone down, hurting revenue, and spending isn't going down, that causes the government to borrow a lot of money. And unfortunately, the market isn't really looking to buy that many government bonds, which means that the interest rates have to go up. And when interest rates go up, stocks go down. And also the cost of borrowing obviously goes up, which means that the county budget and other government budgets are going to be impacted by this going forward. So hopefully the wise people in Washington, D.C. will look at this and maybe make some course corrections before our 401ks mean that we have to work till we're 80 years old. So we'll see how that all goes. Anyway, but you know, fly Eagles fly. I'll leave it on that note. Thanks.
All right, Ryan.
All right, transitioning from the wise people in Washington to the wise people in Annapolis, I will be dedicating the entirety of my comments this evening to a topic that I have been barraging my colleagues up here on the dais with for the last several weeks, and will continue to barrage them and the public tonight with. As the statewide chair of the Legislative Committee of the Maryland Municipal League, I am charged with advocating for the #1 priority for the 157 cities and towns around the state of Maryland this year, which is the restoration, the full and complete restoration of the road maintenance money that is supposed to come to cities and towns under a formula set by state law. Unfortunately, that formula was eviscerated by the state of Maryland back in 2009 during the Great Recession. And ever since then, cities and towns have been working hard to try and get the state to restore that formula to its rightful equation, because without it, cities and towns are being deprived of the money that we need to maintain our roads and other transportation infrastructure, sidewalks, curbs, potholes, bike and pedestrian pathways, everything related to roads and transportation in our cities and towns relies on that funding. And so as part of our advocacy to the folks in Annapolis who represent us this year, we've really been pushing this issue. For those who want to get into the weeds, the funds are called Highway User Revenues, or HURs. That's what people in Annapolis refer to them as, but they're really not about highways. They're really about local roads. And so you might hear us talking a lot about restoring HURs. And we've been trying to recruit the support of members of the public. It's not just city council members and town council members and mayors from around the state who need to be advocating for this. It's everybody, because we need your help to get your money back so that we can help maintain and improve our roads and build the big infrastructure projects that have been on the books for many years but that we've had to defer because we haven't had this money. One of the things that the Maryland Municipal League did this year was create a video public service announcement, and I believe the video staff has it queued up, and with the mayor's permission, I'd like to play that as part of my comments tonight.
Absolutely.
So if staff has it, have them hit the play button.
For 8 straight years, Maryland has not honored its contract to provide transportation dollars to cities and towns, instead using local transportation monies to pay for state road projects. Those are the gas taxes you pay at the pump.
I think it's disgusting. I think something needs to be done about it. There's potholes everywhere.
It's time to tell Maryland's legislators that local roads are no less important than state roads. Local roads provide the connection between homes, schools, businesses, and recreation, and are vital to providing critical public safety services. We are counting on Maryland's legislators to permanently and fully restore municipal highway user revenues to the residents of Maryland's cities and towns in 2018. Contact your Maryland legislator now and tell them to fix local roads in Maryland and return your money to your city or town. Brought to you by Maryland's 157 incorporated cities and towns.
All right, thank you guys. So you may see that video around on social media. You may see it playing on our Gaithersburg TV station throughout the next month or two. We also have postcards, and I've asked my colleagues to fill out these postcards, which they did tonight, but we have plenty of extras that will be in City Hall for members of the public. If you want to write a quick message to your state legislator, you'll see on the front of the postcard has the social media hashtag, which you also saw in the video, hashtag #FixLocalRoads. That is the hashtag that we've been using to promote the importance of this issue to the state legislators. And then finally, I do want to encourage you all to use that hashtag as well if you're on Twitter and you're on Facebook, and make sure that you tag state legislators or anybody else you know who's working in Annapolis. And then finally, I want to mention that hearings on this legislation to restore this money to the localities have already been scheduled. The first important hearing is in the state Senate, happens to be on February 14th. So we are organizing a large delegation of folks, not only municipal officials, but any residents who want to participate. Let us know. We're going to go down to Annapolis for the afternoon. We're going to fill that hearing room with people who are demanding to get this money back for local governments. And because it'll be Valentine's Day, we're going to ask our state legislature to show the love to our municipalities. So please do contact us if you're interested, or you know someone else who's interested, because we really do need a lot of folks to show the breadth and depth of support on this important issue. Again, fix local roads, restore those highway user revenues. So thank you, and that's all I've got this evening.
Thanks, Ryan. Mike.
Thanks, Ryan. I think it's important to remind the legislators that the 157 municipalities, that's all the municipalities in the state of Maryland, represent over 1.5 million residents in the state of Maryland. So maybe they ought to listen up. I was able to attend the interview with the Latvian journalists. That was a lot of fun. They had asked some interesting questions, and they were at the almost near the end of their visit to about 25 cities, I think, in the 10 days that they'd been here. So I think they saved the best for last. We gave them a pretty good description and explanation of how we do things here in Gaithersburg, and how we actually have to work to make sure that we maintain the diversity of our city, but that we're inclusive and diversity for a reason, and we work at it. I want to thank congratulate and thank the Cougar football team and their representatives tonight for showing up. You had a great season. You guys bring a lot of joy to everybody, I think to yourselves and your staff, but also to a lot of fans. So it's a great community building. I haven't attended in a while. Two of my daughters graduated from Quince Orchard, so you know I'm a fan too. So, and then finally, I wanted to touch on. I attended the funeral of John Small last week, and I just thought I'd give you a little background about John. He'd been a resident of Gaithersburg for 53 years. He was a Coast Guard World War II veteran. A sailor. He was an NIH employee for over 20 years. That was another career. He raised his family here in Gaithersburg, and he was active in civic activities. But I got to know John in 2005. He was a resident of the Broadstone Apartments at the corner of which were replaced by the Highlands, I think, right? Is that what it's called? So that those apartments were destined to be redeveloped and torn down. So a number of those residents, and there were a number of market affordable housing apartments in that complex, over 300 units. A number of those residents were going to be displaced. So as a result of that, partly as a result of that, and knowing other types of redevelopment would displace other residents from affordable housing, we undertook a policy to help provide some protection to residents. John was very active in that process. He had been a volunteer, the first official volunteer park observer in the city, and because he lived at the Broadstone, his territory was Boer Park, Summit Hall Farm Park. So he patrolled the area, picked up trash, and was a greeter for people who were at the park. But after that, going through this issue of how do we protect tenants being displaced, I encouraged him to become more formally involved in city committees. So he became a member of the Tenant and Landlord Commission in 2007, and he served until last fall when his health prevented him from being involved any longer. But John was kind of example of the kind of person that helps make Gaithersburg what it is, a character counts city. So my condolences and sympathy to his family, and my gratitude to them for sharing him with us and with the city. So that's it.
Thanks for doing that, Mike. Yeah. Very nice words. So just a couple things to report. Last week, I attended the Maryland Mayors Association conference in Annapolis. It's a good opportunity to exchange information about current legislation, including a lot of talk about HURs with our area mayors, and talk about local matters. There was a lot of interest in the small cell legislation we've passed. Apparently, we may be one of only a couple jurisdictions in Maryland that has actually passed ordinance and regulations, and a lot of them want copies of what we've done. So, Lynn, if I could ask you to send to Candace for sharing, and she'll get it out there. So, as many of you know, the city runs the Wells Robertson House, which is just right across the parking lot from where we are now. It's our home for people recovering from addiction and homelessness. And there is a nonprofit, Friends of the Wells Robertson House, that raises money for the house each year. They have a big event every spring. This year, they used to be called Denim and Diamonds. Now they're calling it the Spring Fling, and it's coming up on April 20th, which is a Friday, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Gaithersburg Hilton Hotel. It is $35 a person. There's a great silent auction, a lot of good food, music. It's a fun event and a tremendously great cause. So for whoever's interested, I encourage you to go to friendsofwells.org, and or if you have any questions, you're welcome to contact any one of us, and we'll get you connected with them as well. The next work session of Mayor and Council will be held next Monday, February 12th, right here at City Hall, to conduct a joint work session with our Board of Supervisors of Elections to sort of go over what our November election and potential changes for future elections. For more information, including the agenda, visit the city's website or contact the city manager's office at 301-258-6310. And the next regular meeting of the Mayor and Council is Tuesday, February 20th, because February 19th is President's Day, right here, 7:30 p.m. It's my understanding we need a motion to conduct a closed executive session. What is the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that the mayor and the city council of the city of Gaithersburg conduct a closed executive session tonight, Monday, February 5th, 2018, immediately following the scheduled session, pursuant to the general provisions article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, 3-305B4, to consider a matter that concerns the proposal for a business or industrial organization to locate, expand, or remain in the state, and B7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice. The topic to discuss is a redevelopment proposal.
Do we have a second? Second. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 4-0. We'll move on to from the city manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one item tonight. Staff has continued to dig into the real property tax issue, and now it's been folded into, it's the time of year that we're forecasting revenues for next year in general. So a couple of preliminary findings, I guess we call them. We are okay on real property right now. We did have a number of accounts that did not grow, but most residential assessments are flat. Where we have seen softness, we did an analysis, is mostly in the newer communities along the Route 28 corridor, Quince Boulevard corridor. And those communities had a really nice run in the last 10 or 15 years, so I guess a little bit of contraction might be expected. But that is where we saw a number of 0 to 3, 0 to 5% reductions in assessments. Of more current concern, some of our operating revenues this year are not coming in where we would have hoped. Building permits in particular are at less than half. We're halfway through the year. We've only collected about 25%. We don't think we have enough time to catch up. We're probably going to come in about $1 million short in permits. So we've had to revise some of our FY19 projections for that as well. And then also compounding that, there's a $1.5 million grant from Montgomery County for reimbursement. I think it's Teacher's Way. That was budgeted for this year that will drop off next year. So some other things have gone up incrementally, but we're looking at the moment at a proposed revenue budget that's about $2 million less than the adopted revenue budget for this year. We're in good shape, as we already know, but it is unusual to see actual revenues go down. We'll keep you posted. Obviously, we have a planning retreat coming up, and we have the virtual budget public forum results to forward to you. We'll keep you posted.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to our economic development update. Tom Lonergan, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Just a couple items from me. JLL Mid-Atlantic Capital Partners has been exclusively retained to market the sale of 700 North Frederick Avenue here in Gaithersburg. You likely know this property is the Lockheed Martin or Leidos site. As it's being advertised, this nearly 44-acre property is zoned MXD, mixed use. It's eligible for density of 1.9 million square feet and presents, quote, a rare, scalable development opportunity with I-270 frontage, all true. Lockheed, or Leidos, has had a long-time presence here in the city, with around 1,000 employees working at the site, a site which was considered as a potential contender for their headquarters flag last year, you may recall. However, last week, you may have read that the company announced Reston Town Center as their new headquarters after an 18-month search around the region. Disappointing for sure, but not entirely surprising, even with a substantial incentive package that had been presented by the city and the state, given the company's concerns about the size and conditions of the facility and the number of C-level executives who were already living in Northern Virginia. That said, Leidos has indicated that they would like to still maintain their presence on this side of the Potomac, and that the economic development staff here is doing everything it can to ensure that they continue to do so right here in Gaithersburg. We've already been fielding inquiries and hosting meetings about the site as well as the company's future, and we will continue to keep you appraised of events as they unfold. Secondly, and finally, better news. It wasn't too long ago that Gaithersburg-based biotech Novavax had some great plans for expansion, plans predicated upon a new respiratory drug whose clinical trials ultimately didn't go so well. Hopes for this drug ran so high that the company wound up leasing nearly 150,000 feet at 1201 Clopper, a property which once housed both Digene and Qiagen. However, after disappointing drug results, Novavax no longer needed the space, and the company negotiated a multi-million-dollar termination fee it reached with the landlord Equus Capital Partners to exit the space that it ultimately never occupied. That said, we are happy to report that the space has been backfilled in full with a similar-sized deal by Lentigen Corporation. Lentigen, already a corporate resident here in Gaithersburg at 910 Clopper feet, albeit in far smaller space, less than 4,000 feet, saw an opportunity for a mix of lab and office space and reached a full building deal with Equus. About a third of that 150,000 feet is lab space, which we know is a critically short commodity here in the city. The company was founded in 2005. They're obviously growing a lot. Just a nice footnote, they were one of the city's first toolbox grant recipients when they just got off the ground with a handful of people for job training. So nice to see them doing so well. We will be meeting with them soon. That's all I got.
Thank you, Tom. Very good news.
Thank you.
I hate to put you on the spot, Tom.
You loved it.
Breaking news today that Cisco has acquired Broadsoft. I assume the city will be following that and doing what we can to find out what impact that might have.
I saw it as breaking news today, although Sharon and I did have some heads up about this several weeks ago, and we have been following it. No impact locally as of right now, but we are following it.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next we're going to move on to policy discussion. And I see Louise Kaufman coming up. Yes, and indeed, you are on the agenda to lead us through this item.
Thank
Louise,
you.
welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight's policy discussion is to amend an ordinance, Chapter 24, Article 16, entitled The Affordable Housing Requirements, Section 24-250, entitled Definitions, Section 24-251, entitled Applicability, Section 24-252A, entitled Requirement to Build and Sell Affordable Housing in For Sale Developments, Section 24-253, entitled Requirement to Build and Lease Affordable Housing and Rental Developments, and 24-254, entitled Materials, Appearance, and Distribution of Affordable Housing Units. The purpose of the subject text amendment is to modify certain sections of the city's affordable housing ordinance in Chapter 24, Article 16. If adopted, these modifications would reduce the formula income calculation for MPDU for-sale units from 70 to 65% of AMI, so as to make them more affordable to the target population of households between 50 and 80% of AMI. To add a new definition for high-rise rental units so as to allow for a slight increase in the rental rate to help offset greater costs of construction. To ensure that properties providing a range of housing types for the elderly and persons with disabilities comply with the law as defined in Chapter 24-1. Extend the control period in new rental housing from 30 years to life of the property as rental housing, and to require that properties that convert to housing also comply. To strengthen the language related to the type and distribution of affordable units in a new development by stipulating that MPDU and workforce housing units be available in proportion to the overall unit size and type of market rate units, that they be evenly dispersed, and without approval by the city manager, they not be side by side. One change has been made to the draft text amendment. In response to concerns raised by the Mayor and Council and the Planning Commission during the November 20th public hearing, staff replaced the word generally dispersed with evenly dispersed. The proposed language had been widely dispersed. A joint public hearing was held on November 20th, 2017. No one from the public testified during the hearing. The Planning Commission made a unanimous recommendation of approval during their January 5th, 2018 meeting. The Mayor and Council's record closed at 5 p.m. January 12th, 2018. No comments were received at the time the record closed. A draft ordinance for CTAM 7748-2017 has been included and is ready for final action should the council so choose. So, as you heard from Barbara Sears and you saw in the letter, they have requested that we further amend the language, although that letter was received on January 29th. So before I sort of describe what staff would consider recommending, I think you would have to say if you're willing to consider receipt of a letter after the closing of the
Well,
record.
let me ask you this, Louise, and this isn't opining one way or another on that request, but should the council pass the ordinance amendments as written, if an applicant who has a sketch plan, an approved sketch plan, comes to ask for an exception, is there a provision for an exception? Okay.
Not as written.
Actually, there is a waiver provision in section 24-256 of the ordinance. There are specific requirements for the waiver, and I think that in the kind of getting to the merits of the letter, there is already in section 24-254, which deals with the side-by-side units, the ability of the city manager to otherwise approve. And if you were to consider this, we would suggest that you grant to the city manager the ability to waive both the side-by-side and the proportionality requirements. We think that that's a much better solution than the one that's proposed in the request.
Okay.
So just to clarify, right now as written, 24-254 as proposed gives the city manager discretion to waive the side-by-side ban or prohibition, let's call it, but does not give the city manager discretion to waive the proportionality requirement.
Correct.
In what case would that be waived? I mean, are they proposing that they want to build in this new development some of the units side by side? Is that?
Well, my understanding, and the planning staff may have a better understanding of this because I've not been involved in all the discussions with the developer. For this, particularly for the 700 Quince Orchard Road project, my understanding is that they do want to build 16-foot units, which would be only MPD units, 18-foot units, which would only be workforce housing units, and then 20-foot and larger, which would be the market rate units. Under this, those would not have the same proportionality. So if this were passed, that would not be something that would be permissible, again, unless otherwise, if you would go with the staff recommendation, unless otherwise waived by the city manager.
Well, can I ask about that? Because under our existing code and regulations implementing our existing code, there isn't anything that would prevent that.
You know, that is an area that this has long been staff's position, that there had to be that kind of proportionality. We have had pushback from various developers because it wasn't, the language didn't specifically say that in our ordinance. Certainly I know with the recently negotiated Johnson annexation, I mean, we wrote that into the annexation agreement itself to make sure that it was abundantly clear that there had to be the proportionality. But we have had developers on several projects kind of push back on, you know, your language kind of says that, but it doesn't specifically say that. So I think the amendments to the ordinance that are before you tonight was really staff's attempt to make sure that the language in the ordinance was abundantly clear that that was our intention,
But
that
not-
there be that proportionality.
But not necessarily an admission that our previous interpretation of our existing code was incorrect.
Correct.
Okay.
So can we walk through some of these different concepts now? Is this a time to
Go
talk
right
about the
ahead.
specifics?
Yes. Yeah.
So first of all, I think whenever we talk about affordable housing, we need to, for the purpose of the general public, explain what these actual terms mean. So for example, workforce housing units are set here at to be affordable to people who make 90% of the area median income.
Between 80 and 120% of AMI.
Didn't it say 90 here?
The formula to calculate the sales price is based on 90%.
Okay.
But the range of households are 80 to 120%.
That are eligible.
So, but anyway, I mean, the area median income is something just over $100,000 a year in this region, 110,000. So we're not talking about, we're talking about people still who are making a pretty good living by national standards at least. And for the MPDUs, it's at a lower threshold, but it's working people. It's so that people who are working in jobs like, teachers and policemen and firemen and things like that can afford to live here, which is a benefit to our community. So I think that's important. I know people are concerned because they hear affordable housing and they think of all sorts of things, so which are perfectly okay, but it's not what this plan is for. So there are a number of changes to the policy that are proposed here, and some of them strike me as being non-controversial, like the approved rental price in the high-rise units being slightly higher because it costs more to build units in a taller building, adding housing for the elderly as a requirement, and so on and so forth. There are some that I'm not entirely sure are as critical. So, for example, the proportional size, which is one where the question I have is, what we're doing now is making the units that aren't designated as affordable even more expensive, right? Because a builder has a certain set of costs. So if we say, well, you have to make these units bigger, and therefore costing them more, they're going to have to move that cost to somebody else's. And I'm not sure that that's a desirable outcome. So I'd like to make sure that we have that conversation and understand why it's being proposed by staff and whether it, in fact, it has negative side effects that might not be what we're looking for. The other one I'm curious about is currently for rental units, the lifetime of an MPDU is 30 years from initial, and you're proposing it to be forever, which seems a little extreme. I know the county's limit is 99 years, I guess. You know, I just hate to bind future generations into something that may or may not be applicable. And we already have a fairly, you know, at least we don't have enough affordable housing in Gaithersburg, but we certainly have a lot more proportionately to our population than other parts of Montgomery County do. So locking in affordable units in the future, you know, to the year 3000 or whatever these buildings last to, it just seems a little excessive. So I'm just wondering, for those 2 points, how important they really are, and is there real solid justification for changing them to that level?
Well, let me address the rental housing extension. What we're primarily trying to do is ensure that MPDUs are rented by households that meet the income qualifications. There are apartments in Gaithersburg that are MPDU rents, but they're often rented by people who are at higher incomes than the 50 to 80%. What we're trying to do is ensure that these units are preserved for people at a certain income range. So I personally think that keeping the longer term is very important. I mean, by 2045, all of the current MPDUs will be out of the MPDU restrictions. They'll be gone. I don't see, I mean, we're Camden, which is renting 55 MPDUs in the next year, will bring more units, and that will be an extended period of time. But Montgomery County has several times extended their control period. It started out as a 20-year control period and then a 30-year control period. There's a reason why they keep extending it. Rockville has a 30-year control period. They're considering extending it. Affordable housing is not, the need for affordable housing in Gaithersburg is not going to go away. And 280 MPDUs is great, but I want to expand the number of MPDUs. And the way to do that is not just to build new and not just to convert, but retain the affordability over the long term. So that's how I feel about that particular issue. And then, so your question related to the materials, appearance, and distribution. So let me read you what the current section reads before we've made any proposed changes. Materials, appearance, and distribution of affordable housing units. MPDUs and workforce housing units shall be of the same appearance and use comparable exterior materials to the market rate units of the same unit type. Additionally, these units must be generally dispersed throughout the development. There's no discussion or mention of proportionality in this. Staff wanted to impose some clarity and some, certainty to this process. We believe that proportionality is an important thing. In the regulations where we do the pricing, we make modifications based on what the unit size is and the square footage, but staff's position when we drafted this was that it was important to add that the units be proportional. I certainly would not oppose the mayor and council agreeing to allow the city manager. So what the language would read, if we made some change, the language would say, MPDUs and workforce housing units shall be of the same appearance, use comparable exterior materials to the market rate units, and be proportionate to the overall unit type and size of the market rate units unless otherwise approved by the city manager. Additionally, these units must be evenly dispersed throughout the development, and no affordable unit shall be side by side unless otherwise approved by the city manager. That's what we would.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
If I could add one thing
Lynn and Ryan.
Okay, if I could add one thing to Louise's comments. One of the things that staff has had concern about, and only because we have seen this in working with developers, is sometimes there is the approach that we're going to make the MPDUs smaller units, and we're going to cluster them all in one area.
that's the
So
problem.
it kind of gives the stigma of, these are the MPDs over here versus integrating them into the community.
Right.
And I think the idea of this is to ensure that those units are more integrated into the community.
Right.
So the
was
dispersal part is obviously clear and effective for that sort of thing. It's the size of the units that I'm just wondering is how important is that to the...
Well, not all families are the same size.
Yeah.
So-
But I think Lynn already beat me to the punch here when the response to the issue of proportionality is this concern that you're going to create a second class tier of units within a development, and that's against the whole concept of integrating mixed income housing and making sure that it feels like one united community where you can't differentiate between one unit and another based on it being an MPDU versus not. And I understand the issue about cost, but if you have a hypothetical development where all the MPDUs are a smaller layout or a smaller unit, even if they're spread out around the development, people are going to know that. And it's sort of just one more aspect or factor of the units that kind of creates a second class or second tier, which frankly is contrary to the spirit and purpose of having the MPDU program. As for the issue of the control period, I know that the county has had a lot of concerns about this, and it's actually sort of borne out in the data because the county's program has actually been around quite a while.
Since 1974.
Since 1974. So for a 30-year control period, all these units that have been built since then would be gone. And the concern is that we don't develop fast enough. We're not going to have enough room to develop enough additional units over time to not only continue to grow, but not even keep up with the existing units that we will have created over the previous 10, 20, 30 years. And the life cycle of a building is not 1,000 years, obviously, but
if they build it right.
Well, maybe, I don't know. But 30 years goes by quicker than people realize, and then what happens is you start very quickly depleting the supply of MPDUs, and you're not going to be building new density at the rate to be able to keep up because we're running out of room and we're already building it at fairly high density, and so that's the concern. It's a fair point. We don't want to over-restrict, the property rights of private property owners, but at the same time, the whole point of this program is to create more affordable units. And if all we're really doing is treading water by creating a bunch of units, having them disappear, and then creating some more, and basically either being level or even declining.
Well, if there's an ongoing set of construction of new units, then that's less of an issue, right? For example, the Kentlands infill development is going to create, potentially over 10 or 15 years, 3,000 new apartments. That's hundreds of MPDUs.
Right, but then 30 years from then, all those units will be gone from the supply of affordable housing.
The next building is built, right?
Where? So that's the concern.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to make that point.
Well, so I think when we started to develop this ordinance and policy, we were the model was what the county had done. That was both Rockville and Gaithersburg did it at the same time. But I think at the same time, I think Frederick was looking at things like this as well. So, I think that's how we ended up on 30 years as being reasonable, but also understanding the limitation of how long that supply would last, or the issue of that. And we certainly have a different control period for MPDUs and workforce housing for owner-occupied as well, because that's another issue. There has been a movement among affordable housing advocates that whenever you redevelop, you have to, and you're losing redeveloping what was affordable housing, that there should be a one-for-one replacement. We did not opt to do that. We decided on a flat percentage of the number of units that would be affordable, regardless of what the number was that we started with in terms of a redevelopment project. So I don't have any problem with the control period of indefinite. I guess that's what it says, right? An indefinite period, or
it says.
But I don't have a problem. I also don't have a problem with the 99-year period either, because I think it would exceed the realistic life of most residential structures.
And Mike, to your point about the redevelopment, when we adopted this ordinance in 2006, there was a big housing boom, a big
There was.
redevelopment boom, and we were anticipating lots and lots of
Yes.
new construction. And then
A year later,
and then
basically everything stopped.
collapsed. Right.
So, that could happen again, given your admonition about watching the stock market and interest rates. This could happen again in the very near future. So, basically, we had the Crown Farm stopped, the Spectrum stopped, the Archstone stopped because of the collapse of the real estate market and real estate investments there. So we didn't, even though we had approved a number of proposals for affordable, that included 15% affordable housing, not one of those was built until Crown finally started building them. So I think that's right.
So it's policy discussion. Want to talk about
So
the other
anyway,
parts?
so the other parts, I don't have any problems with the other parts. I do, this issue of proportionality, I think Ryan described it perfectly well. The way that I would have is that basically you create a second class or a different class of housing and assume that everybody that needs an MPDU has the same size family and would occupy the same kind of space, when in reality there are different size families and need different amount of space. And so you provide that MPDU at each housing size available within the community. You distribute them throughout the community. That's the whole concept of part of the concept of inclusive zoning. And so I'm a little reluctant to change that philosophy. I think staff's done a good job of implementing the intent and wishes of the council from 2006 up to this point. I don't think it's been a bad thing, but I can't speak to what the property owners are going through. But I think that was our intent. That's always been our intent. Anybody who's paid attention to our affordable housing discussions since 2006, when we first passed this, should have been aware of those issues. So. In terms of the adjacency of units, I think the language here would allow the city manager the discretion to grant that. I'm okay with that. So that's where I stand.
So you're prepared to support
I'm prepared to support it as is. I would entertain a change from indefinite to 99 years if somebody wanted to propose that for the control period for rental, but I don't know that anybody's proposed that yet. So.
Okay, Ryan, you want to?
Can I ask a data point question? And I don't know if staff has this off the top of their heads, but I am somewhat sympathetic to the idea that we try not to change the rules midstream for property owners who are working with us to develop their properties. It's good business and it's fair not to try to change it unless you have to. Do we have a sense of how many affordable housing units are in the pipeline for projects that have already received schematic, maybe not schematic development plan, but at least sketch plan at this point, so we have an idea? It's been suggested that one way around the concern would be to, grandfather any projects that already are past that point. I'd like to get a sense of how many units we'd be talking about if we were to do something like that.
So it's the Johnson property, and I don't know where that is in the planning, but I've been working with the Johnson property on the affordable housing units, but I don't know where that stands.
Well, we've already
they do have
That's
STP approval.
Yeah,
They
so that,
what? Sorry.
They do have STP approval.
It's already past this
Yeah.
point.
All right.
What else?
Okay.
What else you got?
And 700 Quince Orchard.
Okay, just that one.
Yeah.
What about
which I
So
think-
just wait, are they already automatically grandfathered if they've already got STP approval?
Yeah, the trigger, if you look at the affordable housing regulations in various parts of the ordinance,
Yeah.
everything triggers at SDP or site plan.
Okay.
There's nothing that triggers at sketch plan.
Okay.
So that would be
They weren't
introducing
grandfathered, though.
potentially
They
two
were grandfathered.
two
We put
different.
specific language in the Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
It's all
No, but I mean, that's
No,
at the
what I'm
time,
saying
that's at the
is,
time.
I'm saying
Yeah.
if they, now that they have site development plan approval, there's a lot of acronyms here.
Yeah.
Schematic development plan approval, if this were to pass tonight as is, because they don't have final site plan approval, they would still have to comply with this as opposed to.
Well, we baked it into the.
We baked it into their annexation
Into their
agreement,
annexation
it's
agreement.
So
not
it doesn't
gonna-
matter for them.
Yeah, it doesn't matter
Okay,
for
so
them.
they're off the table because it sort of doesn't matter for them.
Yeah.
It's baked into their annexation agreement. So aside from them and 700 Quince Orchard, are
And
there
Trudy
others?
What about Sol and Kimco?
Yeah. So,
But I don't have any, I've had no affordable housing discussions with any of them.
I'm just asking in terms of where they are in the process.
So Trudy,
We don't have a sketch plan for
They're
Kimco.
still it's sketch.
sketch
Saul
plan.
has a sketch plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Kimco has not applied for a sketch plan.
Yeah.
The fairgrounds has a sketch plan. There's
Okay.
several other MXD properties that have sketch plan.
Yeah.
And we really don't get into, as Lynn said, we don't get into the
Yeah.
affordable housing, but it's been staff's policy to broach that subject and say, whenever we do that, we want to have it proportionately
Right.
throughout the site.
All right. So that's helpful, and that kind of reinforces my feelings of being wary of language that would key an exception or key a grandfathering to sketch plan approval. Because there's so many different projects out there, and sketch plan is quite an early stage. So that was just by way of me kind of saying, you have reinforced my feelings about that. You know, this is policy discussion, so if there's enough support for it, I might be willing to entertain the idea of adding an unless otherwise approved by the city manager clause to the end of the first sentence of section 254, mirroring the one at the end of the second sentence. I'm frankly not thrilled about having to do that. But, you know, depending on the will of my colleagues, if that's what's required for a compromise to get this passed, I'd be willing to entertain that. I also think there should probably be a comma in the second sentence between the word development and the word and. But anyway, so,
Okay.
I don't know. It'll depend on
Neil.
what other people think.
Let's
here.
come back to Neil.
Yeah, look, I was just trying to poke at the details here to make sure that we were all comfortable and that I understood the reason for all these things in terms of, you know, proportionality and things like that. I mean, you know, I'm just used to the idea that smaller houses cost less than bigger houses, but, you know, that, I don't really have a huge issue with it. I do think that perpetuity is longer than I'm comfortable with, and putting a number on it makes me more comfortable, and giving the city manager the authority so that if there's an exceptional case, we are not completely inflexible, I think is something that's very appropriate. So I'd support that as well.
Okay. Lorianne.
Well, I really don't have any feedback regarding the changes in the size. I have to agree with Ryan. I understand that the outside look of a building could make some residents feel uncomfortable, and so we want to make sure that anyone who is able to rent or purchase a home doesn't feel slighted in any way because of the outward appearance. And I know that with the building of these units, we want them to be as uniform as possible while saving costs. And with our housing stock being so limited, I did see that the county has already increased the years of how long exactly the period of control, and so I don't agree with changing it. I would agree that for the life these units should be preserved, because we don't know when the next development will be built. We don't know if there will be waivers to a particular development where we can't build the required minimum. So I don't see anything wrong with the 15% that's set aside being dedicated to 100 years. So, yeah, I'm in agreement with the proposed amendments to the text.
All right, so I guess the two items that where you guys may want to call for amendment, I guess three if we want to count the comma, are the number, whether it's the life of the property versus 99 years, and whether we stick in the clause about the city manager when it comes to the size.
Yeah. Can I ask Tony and put him on the spot a little bit? Would you feel comfortable being able to implement a law that gave the city manager discretion over this proportionate, not discretion, I wouldn't call it discretion, I would say unless, it's in the event of a good reason, the ability to potentially waive the proportionality requirement and the side-by-side requirement. I mean, being able to actually implement that, in real life and practical terms as projects come before you. And
I do, and I would. And our experience with this is pretty limited, but
Yeah.
I do recall in the West Deer Park project that Louise and I sat down with the developer who was kind of stuck on an issue exactly like this, and the three of us just worked it out in an hour, and everyone walked away happy. The same number of units got built. They just got moved around a little bit. So it has proven useful in the past.
And what was the outcome with the West Deer Park? Were more units, affordable units, built side by side, or?
What we agreed to was that some of the MPDUs, more of the MPDUs could be condos, and then the workforce units would be the townhomes. At West Deer Park, there are 2/2 condos, so that's what we agreed to. So we still had 6 MPDUs and 6 workforce housing units, the 12 total that was required.
Yeah, it just seems that making things a little bit more flexible is more the Gaithersburg way.
Yeah. But that a variance should be only made for good cause and, not too much discretion. But I agree with you. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a motion. That's okay?
Go right ahead.
I'm going to make a motion that we...
You ready, Doris? There's going to be a comma here.
approve the updated draft presented by staff with an amendment that in section 24-254, at the very end of the first sentence, the language.
What page are you on?
It's 89. Back at page 89.
It's the last page of the draft ordinance.
If you're in the PDF, it's page 89. If you're an acrobat, it's page 89. Oh,
You got it?
Can you
It's
find
the last
it,
page of the ordinance.
Okay, so where are you putting? All right.
This is it?
So
Section
end of the sentence.
24-254, at the end of the first sentence, the clause,
Thank you.
unless otherwise approved by the city manager, be added at the end of that sentence. And that in the second sentence, a comma be added after the word development. That's my motion.
okay. Do we have a second?
Were we
Well,
looking at the 99 years
yeah.
versus forever as well?
My motion does not change the
Control.
control period.
Can I ask about those, the condos that were put on, are those affordable units?
Yes, they were, MPDU sold initially at $236,000.
So the fees didn't affect their affordability?
No, because they're townhomes, so actually the fees are only $115 a month.
Okay.
They're not like,
regular
multifamily
We've had
condos.
It's not like a
we've
tower.
had extensive discussion about condo fees, and it's a tough nut to crack. And in that case, obviously, it's not a big deal, but in other cases, it is. But it's not addressed in this ordinance
This right now. Yeah.
My
we have
my
that.
motion is on the table. I don't know if there's
Okay, we have that motion. Neil, if you're looking to do the control period, maybe you propose an amendment to his motion, or someone second it.
Well, we could
Just vote on
have
it.
separate motions for the changes. Can we read that back then, how you would, that first sentence?
Yeah, so it would say section 24-254 would start, MPDUs and WFHUs shall be of the same appearance, use comparable exterior materials to the market rate units, and be proportionate to the overall unit type and size of the market rate units unless otherwise approved by the city manager.
Okay, we don't need a second comma after units.
I don't know. If you'd like to propose that,
well, you can, I mean,
All right.
comma.
I'm just making
otherwise
sure,
approved.
since we're adding commas.
Yeah.
I don't know if
There
we
was a
need
new
one.
comma in the second sentence, right?
The reason I put the comma in the second sentence is to separate the
Yeah.
issue of approval by the city manager
Yeah.
from the issue of being evenly dispersed.
Yeah.
I think that the city manager should not have discretion to not have them be evenly dispersed. I think they should be evenly dispersed regardless. That's my take. I'm
No,
happy
I-
to discuss it.
I agree with that.
I agree with that.
All right, so the comma is looking good. Now, the question is our control period. If nobody wants to do anything, then let's second this motion and vote on it.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, carries 4-0. We're good.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Louise. Next, we have from the city attorney.
Just two updates on items. First is the Pepco rate case. The city's motion to intervene in that case was granted at the end of last week. The hearings begin on June 4th. The Public Service Commission is intending to hold 2 public hearings like they've done in the past. There'll be one in Prince George's County, one in Montgomery County, to give residents the opportunity to go in and testify on this issue without having to attend the formal hearings. Those public hearings have not yet been scheduled, but we will let you know when those do get scheduled.
Thank you.
And we will put that on our website as well. Interestingly, the commission has asked Pepco to respond to the recent federal tax cuts and how that will impact its need for a rate increase. So I think that they're looking at potentially lower increase based on the cost savings from the federal tax changes.
Okay.
On a second, this is just kind of for your information. The city of Ocean City filed suit January 16th against the county on the tax duplication issue. They are a May county versus the Montgomery County is a shall county, but they have alleged in that case that the difference between the May and the shall counties is unconstitutional, and they've asked the court to declare that unconstitutional. They have also, and that won't necessarily impact us because we are already a shall county, but they have also interestingly put forth an argument to the court that under the shall counties, the county is obligated to pay you the exact dollar amount of the services, the duplicative services that you provide to that municipality. Ocean City apparently had a outside study conducted where they already received $2 million from the county, but they think they're owed $7.8 million. So we will certainly follow that case. It's, again, just been filed, so it'll be interesting to see how that impacts the tax duplication issue across the state.
Yeah. Louise, don't go yet. I just want to.
Yeah, that's it for me.
My understanding from the chatter here is that Neil was unaware that what Ryan had moved was the ordinance amended with the language. He thought he was just.
I don't have an issue with it.
You don't? Okay, I
was just surprised there wasn't a second vote. That's all. But I'm comfortable. I would have voted for it regardless.
Okay, I'm glad. Louise, you're good then. Okay. Dennis, did you have a couple things?
Yeah, a couple of announcements. I wanted to make the mayor and council and the public aware that WSSC is going to do another water line replacement in the Observatory Heights neighborhood. It's going to affect Spring Street, George Street, James Street, Mill Street, Dwellings Road, and portions of Cedar Avenue. That will actually start in this spring of 18, and will be completed in the spring of 19. So that'll be the second major kind of water line project that we have going in the city, preferably in Old Town.
Let's keep a close eye on how they clean up after
So
their
they're
work.
replacing the entire main then, right?
Yeah,
Mains?
especially on those streets. Cedar Street's a little odd because it cuts back. It's only a
Yeah.
portion of Cedar Street. It doesn't go all the way to Harmony.
Okay.
Cedar Street is actually only the sections between Mills Road and George Street, but the other portions are their entire sections. Again, most of those are dead-end streets, 1 or 2 blocks. In addition, I wanted to let you know that the State Highway Administration released the bid for the NIST path on 124. That was on January 23rd. The bids are due back on February 22nd. This has been a project that we've been working actively with SHA and NIST to get built. The way this will work, again, I think the council is familiar with, is we have entered into an MOU with the state and NIST that once the path is constructed, we will maintain the path in terms of snow removal and maintenance of the path itself. And then the SHA will be actually out of the picture at that point. So that will actually start construction shortly thereafter if they actually award the bid.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you.
I was thinking about asking about that when we had NIST here presenting, but I thought it's not really part of their 20-year master plan.
Yeah.
Were the residents notified about this water main?
They will be notification, and we've requested that we receive the notification prior to it going out. I can guarantee you that may or may not happen. Sometimes we receive it a day.
That's not much of a guarantee.
Sometimes we receive it a day before, sometimes we receive it after. WSC is improving. Again, one of the agreements we currently have with them is they're required to get a permit for this project because it's a major water line replacement and not emergency repair, and they are complying with that. So I think things are moving smoothly. I think they're still trying to figure out the logistics on their end to make sure. On the notification list are 5 people in the city, so hopefully at least one of them will receive it before it goes out. But I can tell you, on the previous one, it actually went out before we actually received it, and then received it the next day.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. Anything from any other staff? Not seeing anything. As a reminder, we're going into executive session immediately after this meeting. Next work session of the Mayor and Council is next Monday. It will be our joint discussion with the Board of Supervisors of Elections about our debrief of the 2017 election. And the next regular meeting of the Mayor and Council will be Tuesday, February 20th, due to the President's Day holiday. Until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.